We will quickly start. Today's session is focusing more on ES, which is Ecmascript. In the first session, we discussed, right, that um, current Angular version is focusing more on the standardization which Ecma has provided in the version Ecma 6. So that is called Ecmascript 2015 as well, and the other name is ES6 as well. So we are going to learn the necessary concepts of ES6. So ES6 is quite big. We are not going to cover each and everything of ES6, but whatever the basics are there, right? And whatever the necessary stuffs are there to require Angular 2, to learn Angular 2, we will cover that in 2 sessions. Okay. Let's move to the uh, our today's session, which is focusing on ES6. So we are into ES6 part 1. So there are 2 parts of ES6. Some part we'll cover in today's session, some part we'll cover in the next session. Okay. So what is the agenda for today? So there are various concepts around to ES6. We are going to cover scoping. We are going to cover destructuring. Okay. And we are going to cover promises, and we are going to cover arrow functions. Along with that, I would cover creating classes as well. I would cover the modules as well. Okay, which is not mentioned in the agenda, but I will try to cover that because those are the stuff which you will require when we will start building Angular 2 application. So moving to the next slide, what is ES6? So as I said, right, ES6, also called Ecmascript, is the 6th major release of the Ecmascript language specification. So the previous one was ES5, and that was there since long, and the current JavaScript version supports ES5. So current JavaScript version doesn't support ES6. It's not 100%. There are some of the concepts which are supported by JavaScript. If you're using Chrome and Mozilla, most of ES6 features are now supported by those browsers. Okay. But the problem with Safari, Internet Explorer still remains same. They are not up to the mark, and they are not currently support that version of ES6. Now Microsoft has fundamental reason for that, because Microsoft is having its own TypeScript, right? So they are enhancing TypeScript, but they are not more focusing on the JavaScript part. So as I said, ECMA stands for European Computer Manufacturer Association. It's the organization who standardized JavaScript. So whatever the standardization comes are implemented within JavaScript, and then all browser supports that. And now you are having those features, executable features in your browser. Okay. So as I said, ES5 is what the current version is. Still, you can execute some of the ES6 features. So whatever we are going to learn, those all features are there in the Chrome and Mozilla. So you would be able to execute that. If you are running some old browsers, you may not be able to execute whatever the code we are writing. So why should we learn ES6? It's the latest standardization for JavaScript, right? And going forward, people will build the programs using ES6. So ES6 is quite new. It is just finalized in 2015. So it's even not a full year for ES6. So it's slowly evolving. People are getting involved to it. Angular 2 are more getting involved to it. And it's good that if we learn now, it would be easy for us to write JavaScript code in future, right? Because ES6 will going to be there. It's not ES7 will come in 1 or 2 months or 3 months or even in a year. ES6 is going to be there for some time, and it's good that we learn now. It would be very benefit for all of the JavaScript developer. So this question I already answered, right? Do all browsers support ES6? So ES6 support is there 90%, 95% in Chrome and Mozilla, but IE are still lagging. So IE doesn't have enough support. Safari, Opera, again the problem is there. Now the problem is when we will work with Angular 2, we spoke about transpilers, right? So we will work with transpilers to convert ES6 code into ES5, but you do not need to worry about that. As soon as all the browsers are 100% supported by ES6, right, you will not require these transpilers. So when we created the project using Angular CLI, there were system configuration JS file, right? So there we were mentioning transpilers and all. Definitely we do not need to do there because it was automatically created project. But once all the browsers supports ES6, you do not need to convert your code into ES5 from ES6. So at this point of time, we will still work with transpilers to convert ES6 to ES5. But for today's session, it's not required because Chrome supports almost all the feature which we are going to learn. So we'll directly code it and run it into the browser. There are other transpilers, as I said on the first session, Babel, Webpack, right? But let's not go there. We do not require that at all. So let's not speak about that. So some of the basic features of ES6 which we will require while working with Angular 2. Sometimes the basic syntax of Angular 2 is on top of ES6. So what are the features we are going to cover is scoping, destructuring, promises, arrow functions, sets and maps, not today, rest parameters, not today, but we are going to cover class and modules, right? Now, going to the next slide. So I'll not go in this stuff which is not at all related to Angular 2. This is basically some of the restriction which ES6 has put on variable values, right? So I'll not go there. Okay, so some basic features of ES6. Previously, if you remember the JavaScript, if you people are from JavaScript, if you know how we do is the default value assignment, right? So if I create something here, if I create a function in JavaScript, let's say function sample, and I have, let's say, some parameter input, right? Now what we do is we do something like this: input is equal to input or ABC. So what it means? It means if input exists, keep the same value, and if input doesn't exist, put the default value as ABC. Okay. So this statement we used when you must have used when you worked in JavaScript, right? When you create a function, if some of the input parameter you found it to be blank or null or empty, what you do is you set the default value of this. This is Visual Studio Code. This is ID Visual Studio Code. You can use Visual Studio Code. You can use a Sublime Text 3. You can use Atom or any other IDs which you like. So I generally prefer it because of its look and feel, and I like writing in this and Sublime. I like Sublime and this. You can use anyone, right? So for Angular project, you don't need any IDs such like Eclipse for Java and all. You don't need such a big IDs. Okay. So this is how we create the default value in JavaScript ES5. So this is basically ES5 specific configuration. This is ES5. Now when you go to ES6, what happens is you can write a function, and that inside that you can actually mention default value like this. So it's quite useful. It saves a line of code, and it's quite readable as well, right? So that's what this slide says. You can have the default value at the time of function creation itself. Rather than putting it into the function body, you can have the default value of the parameters in the function itself. We may use this in Angular too, we will see. Yes, now the expressions in ES6. Now expressions, we are not going to use it in Angular, because Angular has its own expression and template based language, right, which we are going to learn. So we are not going to use this ES6 expressions, but it is good to know that we have dollar expression exist in ES6. So before to that, I would like to give you some concept about let and variable. So in function, generally in JavaScript, how you define variables. So you will say variable name is equal to a, like this. So this is the way you define your JavaScript variable, right? So let's write some code. Let's have a function. Okay. Let's create a variable here, x is equal to 10. Then we will see if x is equal to 10, variable x is equal to 11. And what I do here is I will print the x. Now I'll make this function as immediately invocable function expression, so that I do need to explicitly call this function, right? So this is immediately executable function. Now what I did is I created the same variable, one in the function, one in the if condition. So can somebody guess what should be the value printed here? What should be the value?
It should be 10, right?
It should be 10. Now let's copy this code. Okay, what I do is I generally use Chrome's console to execute my JavaScript code, but you can use CodePen as well. CodePen, JS Fiddle, JS Bean. You can note it down if you want. It's a good playground to play with JavaScript, but I like this. Write code in Visual Code and copy it in console. That's it. Okay, so that's my immediately executable function expression. Two variables, same name, different value. Let's see what it prints. It prints 11. So the answer is wrong. Now because the answer is wrong, I need to explain why it is 11, right? So what happens in ES5? So this is ES5, Ecmascript 5 standardization. When you define a variable using var, so var is the syntax in JavaScript through which you define the variables. When you define a variable using var, the variable scope is by default function. So these variables are called function scope. So you create this variable. This is function scoped. Even you create this variable inside if. This is also function scoped. Now because we have created another variable with the same name, okay, you get this 11 value because it's a function scope. So this value has been overwritten by this definition. And the scope of this variable again is function. So every variable in JavaScript, if you create by var syntax, That variable is function scope. It means the scope of that variable remains within a function. Okay, so what is ES6? ES6 gives another way of creating a variable. Now what is that? That is, let's copy this again, the same thing, and let me have let, which is let x11. Now if I copy this, I will clear the console, I will test it, run it. So now we are getting 10. So what the difference this let has done with our code? Now this variable was function scoped. Suddenly, as we have made it let, the function scoped variable become block scoped. So this is the fundamental difference. So you will see let lots of the time when we will write code, and generally people prefer it because almost all the programming languages, the variable scope is always block scope, right? Even in Java you have block scope variables. Even in other, I think in Python also you have block scope. So this let provides you a mechanism through which you can create a block scope variable. Now they haven't removed variable as well. They haven't replaced variable with let, but they created another way of creating variable, which is called let. So you will find let number of times in the code. So don't bother about that. It's only a block scoped variable. Now the another functionality of block scoped variable is, let me copy this again, clear the console. Uh, Sorry, I forgot what I was trying to do. So basically what I did is I created a block scope variable. Now, yes, the thing I was trying to explain is the looping part, right? So if your function is having if condition, if your function is having for loops, so generally in for loops we create variables like for variable I is equal to 0, I less than 10, I plus plus. We do something like this, right, in JavaScript. Now if you use I outside this, you will get the last value of that particular index, because this is again not block scope, this is a function scope. So in such cases where you want your variable to be block scope, you can use let. Okay, you can use let. Now can I do like this? Let x is equal to 10, let x is equal to 11. Can I do this? Okay, can I do this first thing? Sorry, I'll do like this. Variable y is equal to 10, variable y is equal to 10. So this is another difference between where and let. Where allows you to create a variable with the same name. So mistakenly you may do some error in your programming, but let doesn't allow you to do that. So if you are having a variable with some name in the same scope, you cannot create a same variable with the same name. So that's another difference which let provides. Okay, so this is about where and let. Now the dollar expression, right? So dollar expression is simple. So let's have a variable first as first, variable second as second, and let me have, or probably I will simply write first plus second. Right, so this is how we do generally concatenation of strings in JavaScript. So there is one additional a feature in ES6 expressions. So they've added expressions, so rather than having operators, you can use expressions to access the value, to concatenate, to concate the value. The problem is you need to put that into this sign. So I don't know what to tell this, but this is the sign below the tilt. So this is not single quote, okay? Don't consider it as a single quote. This is the exact character which is in your keyboard with the tilt character. So you get the tilt when you press the shift, right? So without pressing shift, whatever you get, this is that character. Then you write dollar first, and then you say dollar second. So this is ES6. Not that much useful for us. Just keep a note of it. We are not going to use it in Angular 2. Okay, so this is something again kind of good feature in ES6. So in ES5, when you are having multiple lines, right? So it's very useful when we are building templates in Angular 2. So you just need to put /n and then the concatenation happens of lines. So when you're having multi-line string, in the normal JavaScript we do plus plus plus. Even in the Java, right, we do plus 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 at every new line. You do not need to do that in ES6. You just need to mention /n, and then the next line will be concatenated automatically. So this is a very good feature. One should keep a note of it. Good feature, nothing special here, but yeah, we can use it while building the templates in Angular 2. Okay, going to the next slide. Scoping. So we already covered this. What is let? Okay. New thing is constant. So in ES5 you cannot declare constant. In normal previous JavaScript version you cannot declare constant. Here in ES6 you can actually declare the constant. So let we already know, right? So let I have already covered. What is let? Let is basically covers the block scope variable. Okay, so let is clear. It's constant. So constant is again provided in ES6, not in ES5. Okay, and again this you must be knowing what is constant. So in JavaScript we are having final. Same way we are having const in ES6. So you can define a variable using const, and that variable cannot be changed anymore. So if I create const is equal to, and if I say w is equal to 20, it gives me error because I have created a variable through constant, right? So this is a new feature of ES6. This also you can use in programming. So what is the fundamental behind ES6? ES6 has tried to make JavaScript as similar as Java, or probably more flexible than Java. Okay, so they have included more features to make it like a Java. So we are having classes, inheritance, all those stuff. We will see it. So that's why we are having, block scope variables. We are having classes. We are having constants, and you will see other features as well, which are similar to Java kind of stuff. So they have tried to build something which is more towards object-oriented programming. So in previous versions of JavaScript, you can still achieve object-oriented programming, right? So if you know previous version of JavaScript, you can still make a function work as a constructor, right? Here they have enhanced it in such a way that semantically it looks like a class. So that's the difference. So we'll go there, don't worry. At this point of time, just understand this is a constant. We can create it, and that's how constant work in ES6. Restructuring. This is a very good feature. I personally like it. The reason is it's very simple to understand. So I will clear the console. If you're having any question, raise it, because we are going now on destructuring. So if you're having any questions in lat, if you're having any questions in constant and expressions, no questions. It's quite simple. Okay. So what we are doing now? We are doing destructuring. Okay. Let me create an array. So I will create an array named numbers is equal to 1, 2, 3. Okay. So these are numbers. Now, if you want to retrieve the value of numbers, this array value one by one into some variable, how you would do it? You generally iterate over to it and assign it to different variables, which again will be an array. So you will create an index, then you will assign this into that index, and something it will become numbers. Let's say temp numbers 0, temp numbers 1, temp numbers 2. So temp number 0 is becoming 1, temp number 1 becomes 2, like that. But it has to happen within a loop, right? You need to iterate over to array. In ES6 they have created a new concept called destructuring. Okay, so what I was saying is, if you want to retrieve individual value from these numbers, you generally go ahead and iterate over to the numbers array in loop. You create another array and then you push one by one values into a newly created array, right? But now in ES6 they have created a variable in some variables, individual variables. So how you can do that? You can say variable 1, 2, 3 is equal to, sorry, I'll not write this, probably I write numbers. So when I do one, sorry, console.log, I should print actually. Oh, it's undefined. Why? Okay, probably. Oh, what is the problem? The code is not working, but the thing which will, so what output would be, I would be getting value of 1 into 1, I would be getting value of 2 into 2, and I would be getting value of 3 into 3 automatically. Yeah. So this should work. So it is supported in Chrome actually. I actually tried it. Let me check my example.
Is it the braces?
Sorry.
The braces brackets. Is it angular brackets or the square brackets?
No. These are curly braces only. The problem. No, actually, you may be right. Because it's array, right? I don't know. Actually, I haven't seen such syntax, right? I have destructured JSON objects, so I just thought it would work for array as well. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, and good catch. Good catch. So generally, I worked in restructuring of JSONs, right? So in JSONs, you generally can you please go on mute? So in JSON, you generally do the curly braces, but this is array, so it's a square bracket. Yeah, that's correct. So if you see this, what we have done is, without iterating over to loop, thank you. Without iterating over to loop, we actually retrieved separate individual values into different variables. Now this is array. That's why we have used this. So just consider JSON. So let's say a variable customer is equal to name ABC, ID probably 12. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll copy paste it here, and now I will take the name and ID from customer. So I used curly braces because I generally work with JSON, right? So that's why. But array, you need square bracket. In JSON object, so this customer is a JSON object, right? So if you want to retrieve the value, you do not need to do customer.name to create the name variable. You do not need to do customer.id to create the ID, to retrieve the ID. Does it really helpful? Sometimes yes, but people are used to do traditional way. So most of the people don't try this destructuring. They use normal way of say when it is JSON, right? People are more tend to do customer.name like this. Why? Because this is more familiar way of writing code. Most of the programming languages, even in the C#, Python, you have this kind of stuff where you can access the property of the object. So in JSON, probably it doesn't make much of a difference, but in array, when you create an array, the destructuring may be useful to retrieve the individual values. Okay, so this is called destructuring. This is a new thing in ES6. How much it is useful while coding, I really don't know, because I haven't used this much destructuring. I used it for JSON sometimes. And when it is used, when you want separate values of your object. So I'll give you the example. Let me see this thing. So we have a question from Nikhil, who is asking, if we are having a lot of name value pairs, would it be better to use the object.property? Now, it's again, as I said, right? If you want individual variables to be retrieved, then destructuring is the best way, because you do not need to create separate variables, right? If you want to do this, how you do that? You will say like this: temp name is equal to customer. Sorry. Temp name is equal to customer.name, and then you will say temp ID is equal to customer.id. So you will end up doing this. If you are having tens of thousands of, you would not be having that much of data, but you will end up creating this much of lines of code which can be achieved through this. But again, it depends. If you want individual variable to be retrieved, it's always better to use restructuring. Now, where it is useful, I'll give you a practical example and where exactly we can use it. We can use it in making Ajax call, right? So if you know Ajax, in Ajax, what you do is you prepare a data. Assume you are making a jQuery Ajax call. So in jQuery Ajax call, generally what happens is it happens like this. $.ajax. Inside that, you actually pass the JSON object having lots of key value pair. Okay. Sometimes if you use like this post, you use URL, then you use the method which is basically put or post or get or put or delete, and then the data, right? But this is simple three attributes of the post. If we are having Ajax here, you may need very big object, right? So in that case, what you can do is you can retrieve that into a single variable statement like this, and then you can pass here. So you may retrieve like so if I give you the example of post, because it is having small value, URL method and data, right? So what you can do is you can prepare a config object keeping this URL method and data. I'll write it here for you. I can create a config data having URL as something and method as something, and then the data as something. Okay, and then I pass this config method to my actual function, which is going to call the Ajax, right? So you would be having some button events, event handlers. Inside that, you would be making Ajax call. So there you would pass this config object, and there inside that, what you will do is you will simply say URL method data is equal to config, and then you can simply use this URL, this method, this data into your Ajax call. So you do not need to do config.url, you do not need to do config.method and config.data. In such cases, it is useful. Restructuring is useful if you are trying to retrieve individual variables from the object and you are trying to use it. Restructuring is useful, especially in array and JSON too if you are doing this kind of coding. Okay, so this is about destructuring. Okay, here same example has been given. So you are having 1 2 3 1 2 3 here. This is kind of JSON. We have tried JSON as well, but the practical example is, I'm having one practical example. Okay, I think I told you the same example. So yeah, so that could be the practical example which I told you, right? So that's already I created. So you can make an Ajax call like this, and you can retrieve the individuals very easily in a single line, and then you can pass it into your Ajax call. Okay. Now next, going to the next slide, let's move on. Destructuring promises. Now before promises, I would like to cover then we are having error functions. Okay, so before we go with, okay, let's cover arrow functions first. No worries. Now let's cover arrow functions first. So now you create a function in JavaScript. There are multiple ways, right? You can create a function using named function, using function, and the traditional way, basically we say traditional way of creating a function. I think we have created some functions like that only. So you have this function, right? This is a traditional way. Then you are having function expression, where you generally create a variable and assign a function to it. But in that, you create anonymous function, right? So when you do like this, variable display is equal to function. This is anonymous function, right? Even if it is having name, this part of the code is called anonymous only. Okay. Sometimes what happens is your parameters to the function is function only. So I have a function display which takes another function. And what happens is when you call this function, when you call this function, what you do is you say display and then you say function. It means while calling that, you create your function there itself. So this is again called anonymous function. So these are all JavaScript concept and you all must be knowing it. If not, just for your information, this is called anonymous function. Even in Java, we are having anonymous classes, right? The classes which we create at the need itself. So then when we need it, we create we create the class there itself. Same way in JavaScript, as and when you need your function, you create that function there itself. Okay. In ES6, they have introduced another way of creating function. Now, if you ask me why, I tried to find out the reason, but till today, I don't have concrete answer why they have introduced arrow function. It's basically a new syntax of writing function. So nobody is forcing you to write arrow function. There is no fundamental benefit of writing arrow function. In fact, there are drawbacks, some of the drawbacks of arrow functions. Even though that why they've introduced, please research. If you find answer, also let me know. I didn't find any concrete answer on why ES6 has created arrow functions. Now, although why we are learning, because in lots of the tutorials of Angular, you will find this various places. So you may be wondering what is this, right? Now for that reason, we are learning arrow function, okay? Nobody is forcing you. If you feel it complex, you can simply use the normal way of creating functions, okay? Even in Angular too, it will work. And in fact, I would prefer to create the functions that way. I personally don't like arrow functions. So first, let's see how the arrow functions work. Okay. So arrow functions, right? So normal way we know. I will mute participants. Okay. So normal way, we already know how we create the functions. As I said, functions each and every time. Okay. You may want to write the normal way of functions and no is stopping you, and that will also work. Okay. It's only a new way of creating a function. So how basically arrow functions work? So arrow functions works in this syntax. You define anonymous functions like this. What are the parameters you mention here? Name or probably f name, l name, and then double equal signs, and then arrow, and the actual body. This is anonymous function. This is arrow function. Anonymous function through arrow function syntax. So how we can create a function like this? So you can simply say display inside that like this. So you created an anonymous function which will take first name, last name, and then the body of it. This is how you create arrow functions. Now, if you see the slide, we are having a click event handler. In that, we are having anonymous function which takes event as the argument, and then the body. So this is normal way. This we already know. If we go by ES6 way, this particular stuff will be removed. So this function text will be removed, event will be there, then the arrow, and then actual body of the function. Okay. Now in the slide you have seen some of the benefits of it, right? The benefit of arrow function is basically related to any questions? I'm seeing people going unmute, but they are not asking questions. Any questions? No questions. I'm muting you all. I would really request if you are having any question, then only unmute yourself, right? Just for sake of everybody's convenience. Yeah. Okay. So this is how you create the arrow function. The syntax is a little bit different. Otherwise, everything remains same. Okay. Now we have other examples as well. So this map and all I'm not going to cover today. Okay. So map I will cover in the next session. Okay. But just understand how an arrow function works. So this is one way. So let's create one arrow function. So I have variable display which I want to be an arrow function. Okay, so arrow function will work only in case of anonymous function. So wherever you want to create an anonymous function, you can use arrow function. Okay, so I create a variable called display, which will be nothing but probably arrow function, which will be nothing but my function. So I would be having function input arguments, and then I would be having method body, right? So what will be my parameters? So my parameters will be, let's say, f name, last name, first name, last name, and here what I'll do is I will console.log, I would say f name okay. So this is the arrow function. Let's copy it. Let's clear the console. A B. So this is arrow function. Does it make any significant difference? No. And as I said, frankly telling, I really don't understand why the arrow functions are there in ES6. What they are trying to actually achieve using arrow functions, I really don't know. And I'm trying to figure out, I'll definitely try to figure it out from some colleagues if I get the answer. But at this point of time, I don't have answer to why arrow function and what is the benefit of arrow function. Okay. Now this is arrow function. I think this is clear. You can use it everywhere. Okay. So wherever you are having anonymous function, you can use this syntax, and that becomes arrow function. That is function only. Okay. Now before I go to what is there next? Before I go to promises, I would like to explain some stuff. Now before we go into, so there are some drawbacks has been depicted in the slide. We will go one of them. Okay, so arrow functions cannot be used as the constructor. Generally, when you create an anonymous function, right, it can still be accessed through new. So if you know object-oriented JavaScript, you can create a function, and inside that, you can associate the properties with this. So how you create in ES5, how you create that? You say function is equal to function f name, and then you insert this dot f name, and then you can see variable function object is equal to new function, passing the name as a. You can write function of bj dot. So if I copy it and clear the console, I paste it fn obj, sorry, fn obj dot uh, okay, I have created it with this. Problem is, so we have prototype based inheritance in ES5, right? So we need to attach the property with so if I do something like this, and if I have some question. So basically what I'm doing is I'm creating, so this is ES5, okay, this is object oriented JavaScript. So you create a prototype based inheritance, and you attach a property with prototype. But here only thing I want to highlight is you can create object through new. Whenever you create a function, you can use this new with this function. Okay, if you are using prototype based property assignment. Okay, so the problem with arrow function is you cannot instantiate using new. So that's one of the drawback. Now functions declaration are hoisted. I hope you people are knowing the hoisting concept. What is hoisting? JavaScript hoisting. So I'll explain in short what is JavaScript hoisting if you don't know. JavaScript hoisting means all the declaration goes on top of a function. So if I say temp function, so let me execute this line in the console itself. Function is not defined, right? It's true, it's not defined. But if I write a code below to this, having function as temp function, console.log sorry. Now if I copy this, ideally it should give me the same error, right? Because still executing that function before the creation of that. But instead, the function is getting executed. It means There is a concept called hoisting. Hoisting means JavaScript pulls all the declaration of the function at the top. So regardless of wherever you are calling it, wherever you have created that function, right, wherever you have provided the definition of the function will be always put on the top of the file. So that is called hoisting. That hoisting is not possible in arrow function. Now generally I recommend not to depend on the hoisting, always prefer creation, definition, and only then execution. Okay, so if people follow that coding principle of creation, definition, and the execution, then you do not need to worry about hoisting concept itself. But if you are very much liking in hoisting, if you like hoisting concept a lot, and if you do lots of coding using that, then arrow functions may not be useful because hoisting is not possible in arrow function. Okay, that is one of the drawbacks. Madhurima, this is not Angular JS code. This is not at all Angular JS code. We are still not into Angular JS. This is plain JavaScript. I am explaining JavaScript only. So if you have any question, uh, please ask me. Okay.
Uh, so you were saying about the prototype, right? What is the point of using prototype and when we need to use that prototype?
ES5 standardization supports prototype based inheritance. So generally when you create an object, right? So when I create, let's say I is equal to,
Is it specific to ES5 or I think it supports from, I mean, it's from JavaScript, right?
it is from JavaScript, it is, yes. So when you create a function, right, like this,
Mhm.
and when you print that function, oh, okay, the problem is I won't be able to print it here like this. So what I'm trying to explain is when you create a function, one object, one property gets assigned to it. The name of that is uh, prototype. So every function, when you create a function, this property gets appended to that function automatically. So you do not need to do anything for that. Now, what ES5 tells is whatever the public properties which you want to expose, right? Attach it with the prototype. And whatever the private properties you want to have, you can have it inside the function itself.
Can I say it is similar to this pointer outside the function?
Can you please repeat that?
Can I compare that particular prototype as similar to this operator outside the function?
Kind of, yes. Yes, you
Okay.
can compare that.
So basically prototype will create a function definition, right? Or
No, prototype is the property which is associated with a function. That property is going to contain all the actual property of the function. So
okay,
now this function becomes a class for you. So if I explain that in bit detail, so let me give you the example if you don't know prototype. Let's say I am having a customer, or I will create like this. If you are from Java, you would like this. So I would be having a customer name and customer ID. And what I'll do is I'll say this dot customer name is equal to customer name this dot customer ID is equal to customer ID. And then what I'll do is I would say customer dot prototype dot get customer name is equal to a function which will do nothing but return this dot customer name. Okay, then I would be having customer dot prototype dot customer ID is equal to a function which will, so these are kind of getters in our Java classes, right? These are similar to getters of our Java classes. So you have customer.prototype.get customer name and get customer ID. So now consider this as a customer class having customer name and customer ID. And you create the customer object using variable customer obj is equal to new customer ABC with 10, like this. And then you can, so if I copy it, clear the console, I paste it. Customer obj dot get customer ID, right?
Yeah,
Now
got it.
yeah, so consider it as a class, and prototype is what is public and these are what is private. And that was the reason when we tried this, yeah, this one. Okay, so I have attached it with this, right? So this doesn't become private. The private is like this. You create a variable inside this as, let's say, private where is equal to something private where. Okay. Now if you try to access this like this, customer obj.customer ID, same way if you try to do customer obj.private where, it will not work because I haven't attached it with this. Okay. So why we make it with prototype is basically to have the accessibility of the attributes to outside world to your childs as well. So if you create a kind of gold customer, you can extend this customer in gold customer using prototype. So that is prototype based inheritance. I think if you want to read more, you can search for prototype based inheritance in JavaScript. But in ES6, it has been overwritten by classes and inheritance extents. It is now like Java based, more of a Java based. This is how till now, till today, till now, before ES6, this is how people used to achieve object-oriented programming in JavaScript. So you create a class and then you create an object. These private variables, these are kind of public variables. These are methods which are exposed to outside world. So when somebody extends this customer, so how customer is extended? So you again create a gold customer is equal to function and then write some blah blah blah, and then what you do is you write gold customer dot prototype is equal to customer dot prototype. So this is extension. Now gold customer is extending the customer. So now gold customer can also access get customer name, get customer ID, but they cannot access this. Why? Because it is not attached with prototype. Okay, so these are something called a public variable but limited to that class. Prototype means exposed to outside. So exposed to outside means when you extend your class, this particular functions get visible to childs as well, whereas inside variables doesn't, and this private variable is totally private to inside this code only. So this is called prototype based inheritance. Okay, is it clear? It's simple. It's not that complex. Only thing is you need to attach everything with prototype if you want to extend it to your child. Otherwise, you can keep everything inside this. No issue in that. And how you can create a method in this, like this dot print is equal to function. So this will become a function. So it's like Java class having member variables, some public, some private, some public methods, some methods which are extensible, some methods are not, like that. Okay. So that new thing is not possible. So again, coming back to our point, this new is not possible if we are using arrow function. Hoisting is not possible. New means basically you cannot use that arrow function as constructor. Okay. Now even before going, so this is how you create a class in ES5. Okay, so it's good that now you know how to create a class in ES5. So this is how we create a customer class in ES5. Right? This is the code of creation of customer class in ES5. Now if we want to, I'm having little bit so Nikhil is asking one question. So first thing is you cannot use prototype inside that class itself. So this particular line, customer.prototype.get customer name, cannot go inside this. Why? Because still the definition itself is not done. Once the definition is created, only then the prototype gets attached to this variable. So you cannot use this prototype inside this code. Now if you use customer.prototype.customer name is equal to ABC, then definitely it will change the value of customer name. It will change the value of customer name. But you have to use it outside the definition. So once the definition is done for this customer, only then you can execute this line. It's obvious, right? Because this prototype gets only attached to this variable once definition is created in JavaScript. Once the JavaScript is executed, the definition of this variable created, and then only the prototype gets associated. And basically this is the one which I'm telling. So this prototype, you see, so these are some of the attributes which you haven't created. You have only created name and ID, right? One is the name and another is what was that, customer name and customer ID. But still when you say dot, you see this many of properties apart from customer name and customer ID, and this is the prototype which I am telling to you. This many of property gets attached to your function every time you create a function, regardless of whatever way you are creating, and then it has this prototype. But now we are moving to ES6, so we do not need to remember all this, but just for your reference, we create a class in ES5 like this. In ES6, how you create a class? So it's very simple compared to this. How you create a class is basically very simple. So you say class, you say customer, and then you will say constructor first name, last name, this dot first name is equal to first name, this dot last name is equal to last name. Okay, and then you can have methods as well. Now if you want to create some method, you can simply say like this, display, and you will say console.log, sorry, this dot first name plus this dot last name, and I will name it as full name. So I created a class, clear the console. I have created a class customer. This is the syntax how you create a class. This is JavaScript. This is not AngularJS. Okay, we are not yet into AngularJS. It will take time for us to reach there. We need to learn ES6. We need to learn TypeScript, and then only we'll be going in AngularJS. So class customer, then the constructor. If you don't provide the constructor, it will create the default constructor for you, which will be having no arguments. So at this point of time, we are having arguments, first name, last name. Okay, now the problem is I need to close this browser. Control Shift J. So if you see, I have created a customer class. Now what I can do is I can simply create a variable customer obj is equal to new customer with giving A as first name, B as last name, and I can simply say customer obj dot print full name. So you will get this full name, right? So this is how you create a class in ES6. This is the support of ES6. Very simple, very understandable, and very easy. Now one thing you need to remember here is, if I try to access first name, you can still access it because you have attached it with this, right? If I want to access last name, you can access it with, because that variable is attached with this. Okay, now if you want to create some methods which will return some result, you can still create those kind of methods. So let's say this full name I want to return as, rather than printing, I want to return the full name. Okay, so rather than console.log, what I'll do is return. Okay, now instead of having this print full name, what I can do is I can simply say get full. What it will do, it will make this full name as the property of this object. It will make this full name as the property of this customer, and this becomes getter of it. So you can create the function like this as well. like rectangle is there. You have a property length, width, and then you want to return the area. So that area becomes the property of that. So you can have a simple method as well, okay, without get. But that in that case, you need to call this function. If you append it with get, what is the benefit is, I'll make this customer 2 so that I can execute in the same console. So I'll copy this code. I will paste it. So I've created a customer 2. Now if I want to access the full name, I do not need to call this function. Rather, I can simply, first I'll create object with first name, last name as A and B, and then access. If I want to access the full name, if you see here, my full name becomes the property. So I can simply access like this. I do not need to call it as a function. When I append it with, when I prefixed it with get, it becomes the property of the class, and then whatever the return value, the name of the return value become the function name. So the property name becomes the function name, and you can directly access that using dot. You do not need to call it. Do you really require it? No. So it's always good, write a simple class having methods, having property. Don't do this fancy stuff. ES6 has this fancy stuff inside it. You can use it. If you want, same way you can have setter as well. Okay. So in that also you do not need to call the function. You can simply say dot property is equal to some value, and it will set your full name. Okay. Now this is how you create a class in ES6. Now we are running out of time, so I'll do one thing. I'll show you an example inheritance as well. It's a very simple example. So I'm having a vehicle, I'm having a constructor name and type, I'm having methods get name, get type, right? So this is not that get method which I'm telling you, right? This is prefixed with get. This is the name of the function. So don't get confused with this get name and this get. Okay, this is different. And then I'm having a car. So car extends vehicle, same as Java. This is same as Java. Class car extends vehicle. You are having constructor. In constructor, you are calling the parent class constructor using super. Again, a Java concept. You are overriding this get name method. So you are putting your own get name here. And then you can create a car, and you can call the methods get name and get type. So get type will be of parent. So get type, we don't have get type in car, so it will be from here, from the parent. And get name we have overrides. The value of get name will come from here. So very simple concept of class, constructor, variables and methods. That's it, attributes and methods. We are going to use it a lot in Angular 2. Okay, so every Angular component is a class. So just to give you brief, if I say I'm having a component app, if I create this component in Angular, this will be my class. Okay, so class is very important for us, but it's very simple. Create a class like this, like Java, that's it. Okay, So as and when we'll write some more code, I'll explain you some more stuff. But at this point of time, this is enough to understand about class. Okay, and inheritance as well. So if required, we can inherit one component from another component as well. Now the promise. So promises. So what is promises basically? So promises, I think if you have worked in JavaScript, you may be knowing promises. If you are making Ajax call work on promises. So what is promises? Promises is nothing but to handle the asynchronous call. So ES5 was not having its inbuilt promises. It was depending on third-party libraries like jQuery promises were there. Q library is also there. Q promise. So ES5 was depending on that to create the promises. But now in ES6 they have implemented the promises as well within the standardization as itself. What is promise? Promise is basically when you make an asynchronous call, you are not sure when that particular function will be ended. So just imagine I am loading a file from the hard disk. So I am not sure when that file will be 100% loaded. I want to execute some function only after my file gets loaded 100%. So that becomes asynchronous, right? That's not asynchronous call. That's not synchronous call, right? That is asynchronous call. Because I'm not waiting for my file to be loaded 100%. I'll continue doing my stuff. As and when my file is loaded 100%, I want to execute some function. Let's say printing of a file, right? How you can handle this? You can handle this using promises. Promises is asynchronous handling of functions when you are not sure, probably when you don't want to wait for a function call to be ended. So Ajax call. I want a web service call to my backend. Now I don't know when my web service response will come, right? There may be a high latency system where I'm asking for some output, and I'm not getting that output in a very short time. So what happens is, if you make a synchronous call, your UI may hang. Your UI may not do other stuff which it is supposed to do. So what you do is you make an asynchronous call to the backend system and you do not wait till the response comes. Rather, what you do, as soon as the response comes, you process it. So until and unless response doesn't come, you're not bothered about that. So that is asynchronous call, and I think we all must be knowing what is asynchronous call. Now, how we handle it using promises? So you simply create a promise using new promise. Okay, you simply create a promise using new promise. So foo is a function which is not going to be ended immediately because it's an asynchronous call. Just imagine it's an asynchronous call. Okay. So you write new promise takes a function. So this new promise constructor, so basically this is constructor, right? So this constructor takes one function. That function has two arguments. One is what should be done when your function is ended successfully. And the second argument is what should be done when your function is not ended successfully. So imagine I'm making a web service call. So variable foo is equal to new promise. Inside that function resolve. Resolve means what should happen when I get the successful response from my web service. Second is reject. Reject means what should happen when my web service doesn't give me success response. Okay, so that's a very simple way of creating a promise. Okay, now I know it's little bit tricky, but just imagine that You are making an asynchronous call, you are waiting for the response. Simultaneously, you are processing other stuffs. As soon as you get the response, you do further processing on that response. So that's how you create the promise. So once this promise is created, how you basically call it, right? So there are callbacks on the promises. So there are a few callbacks on the promises. So I'll actually give you the example of that. I have created one example. Very simple promise I have created using set timeout function. So the set timeout is basically a pause function in JavaScript. And I have tried to write a arrow function. So this is anonymous function. No parameters, and this is the body. Okay. Now, what exactly happens is, as soon as this function ends successfully, the success callback on this variable gets called, which is called then. Okay. So basically you have a promise which takes resolve and reject, success and error. You can say resolve and reject is basically the status of the promise. There are other state of the promise as well. One is pending and another is settled. Pending is basically still not completed. Settle means completed fully. But resolve and reject are always sufficient to work with the promise. So most of the promises has only a function which has two steps, resolve and reject, but you can have two more. One is uh, pending and another is settled. Okay. So I have created a promise, I have created a function. What it is doing, it is doing it is calling a JavaScript set timeout function. Okay, passing that set timeout an anonymous function which calls this resolve with 4. So it means it creates an array of 4. Now if you go to handler, so how you call this promise? So you do not need to call this like this. You do not need to call like this. No, do not need to call like this. You can simply say P is a promise, then means whenever it is successful, process the response. How you process the response? Again, this is a function. Again, this is a function which takes response as the argument, and the body response is equal to response plus 2. So what we are sending as the response? 4. Right? This is timeout. Okay, so it's basically 2000 milliseconds. Set timeout takes a function and so this function, how many this function should get executed after how many seconds, how many milliseconds. So I have put 2000 milliseconds. So after 2000 milliseconds means 2 seconds, this function will be called. What it is doing, it's doing nothing, resolving this promise with 4. So either you can reject the promise, you can resolve the promise, it's up to you. So I'm resolving the promise. So as soon as this promise is resolved, this then will be called. Until and unless this is resolved, this will not be called. That's why it is asynchronous. So if we take the example of web service, only when our web service is successfully done, then, right? So it's a plain English. Then, p dot then, response, process the response, and do whatever you want to do. So this is promise, simple promise. So here instead of set timeout, what you may be doing, you may be calling the web service, you may be checking the response from that web service, right? And as soon as your response is 200, 200 is a success response of HTTP call. So as soon as your response is 200, you make a promise to be resolved, and to that resolve, you actually pass the response. So here, instead of this set time, because I don't have any web service, right? So I need to write something which has some delay. So I've written this at timeout. Otherwise, what will be having, you will call $.ajax, right? And once this $.ajax is successful, basically it has success and error function as well. This is jQuery call. If we don't take jQuery, you can simply write a sudo here, call web service, keep checking response status. So in Ajax call, this automatically happens. You basically do not need to do this. And as soon as your response is 200, which is success, or 201 if you are making a post call, then resolve the promise. Else reject the promise. So when you reject, pass the error. When you resolve the promise, pass the response. So this response will be passed to this then callback. Then callback has one function which takes this response and then process it. This is promise. Promise is a very nice concept because nowadays everything is asynchronous, right? When we speak about dynamic data rendering onto screen, it's asynchronous. Nothing is synchronous in front end. You always make a REST call to your backend system, that is Ajax based REST call, and it's asynchronous. So promises are most powerful thing in JavaScript, and almost all the framework uses it. But it is simple, it's not that complex. Okay, how it is written internally, it's complex. Definitely if you go inside the promise code, you will understand 2 or 3%, but using it's very simple. So inside the promise, it's quite clumsy code inside that. So this is promises. We are almost done. And I have covered a few topics, but then it was lengthy, right? So I hope you understood at least whatever we have covered, at least the basic of that. Even if you don't understand promise, you will understand it. Later, sooner or later, you will understand it because we are going to write it practically in our applications when we make Ajax call and all, right? So it's internally implemented. So sometimes you may not need to create the promises. Most of the time, what you do like this. So this is creating a promise and this is consuming a promise. Most of the time, you would be consuming a promise, right? Most of the time, you would be consuming a promise. So we covered some of the basic concepts, arrow functions, let, and difference between let and variable. We also touched upon some of the ES5 concept, which was not there in the agenda, and that's why I think the little bit time has been elapsed. We spoke about prototype, and then we spoke about how we create class in ES5. So it's very simple syntax of creating a class. Even the syntax of arrow functions is very easy. We checked about inheritance. We are yet to go in modules, but modules, it's okay. In Angular, we are anyway going to speak about that, and I'll try to cover it in the next session as well. It's very easy, just like we have import in Java, right? We are having lots of import statements in Java. When we want to use other classes, we do import. Same way we would be doing here as well. So a module is a little bit easy, so we will cover it anytime. We spoke about destructuring as well. So next session we will speak more about some ES6, then we'll move to TypeScript, and then we will move to Angular 2. These are all necessary stuff to understand first. because otherwise you will see Angular and you will not understand even a single stuff. And do the exercises, guys, because if you do the exercise, you will do some practice, and once you do the practice, you will be gear up for Angular 2, right? Otherwise, you will find problem. So that's it. Okay. So I'll ping you all my email ID so that you people get in touch with me for your queries related to your exercise, related to your any other questions you may have, right? Because you would again revisit this video. So if you find any questions, you can mail me and I will try my level best to answer that. So thanks a lot. Have a nice weekend ahead, and I'll see you all on Monday with more ES6 stuff. Okay. So bye bye.